When crime lord Kong Min-sik shatters a marriage arrangement that could cost him everything, he doesn't know his estranged wife is 8 months pregnant with his child, a secret she's kept while building a life far from his blood-soaked empire. But on the night she goes into emergency labor, enemies circle the hospital and Min-sik faces an impossible choice: protect his newborn daughter with the violence that defined him, or destroy the only world he's ever known to give her a chance at something better. In the span of one desperate night, a man who built his kingdom on ruthlessness must decide if he's capable of the ultimate sacrifice, saving his family from himself. Welcome to Korra Story Tales, besties. Please like and subscribe because what happens next will leave you breathless. The glass shattered against the wall, crimson wine bleeding down the white paint like a wound that refused to close. Kang Min-sik didn't flinch. He sat behind his mahogany desk, perfectly still, watching the liquid drip onto the imported Italian carpet worth more than most people's yearly salary. Across from him, the Changsu family's eldest son was still screaming, his face purple with rage, spittle flying from his mouth as he hurled accusations and threats that would get any other man killed before sunrise. "You think you can just walk away from our arrangement? My sister has been preparing for this marriage for 3 years. 3 years, Kong. Do you have any idea what this disrespect will cost you?" Min-sik's fingers drummed once against the leather armrest of his chair. Just once. It was enough. The two men flanking the door straightened, hands moving subtly toward the weapons concealed beneath their suit jackets. Mr. Choi, standing like a shadow behind Min-sik's right shoulder, tilted his head a fraction of an inch. The Changsa son finally noticed the shift in the room's temperature, his anger cooling into something that looked uncomfortably like fear. "Get out," Min-sik said quietly. His voice carried the weight of a man who'd built an empire from nothing, who'd spilled blood on these very floors and slept soundly after. "The arrangement is dissolved. The compensation has been transferred to your family's accounts. We're done here. This isn't over, Kong. My father. Your father is a smart man. Smarter than you, clearly, since he's already accepted the terms." Min-sik stood now, buttoning his suit jacket with deliberate precision. "But if you'd like to continue this conversation, we can do it the old way. Out back. Just you and me. No witnesses." The silence that followed was broken only by the young man's heavy breathing. He looked at Min-sik's eyes, those cold, black eyes that had watched men beg for their lives, and whatever bravado remained crumbled. He left without another word, his footsteps echoing down the hallway until the heavy door at the end slammed shut. Mr. Choi moved to pour Min-sik a drink, but Min-sik waved him off. "How much did that little display cost us?" 2 million in cash, the territory rights to the docks in Red Hook, and a promise not to retaliate when they inevitably try to retaliate anyway. Choi's weathered face showed no emotion. "For what it's worth, sir, I think you made the right choice. I didn't ask for your opinion." "No, but I'm giving it anyway. I've known you since you were 19 years old, Min-sik. Watched you build all of this from nothing. And I've never seen you as miserable as you've been these past 8 months. Min-sik's jaw tightened. 8 months, 2 weeks, and 4 days. Not that he was counting. Not that he stood in his penthouse at 3 in the morning, staring at the Brooklyn skyline, wondering if she was looking at the same stars. Not that he'd kept the ring she'd left behind in his desk drawer, next to his gun, pulling it out sometimes just to remember what it felt like to have something real. She made her choice, Min-sik said, moving to the window. Below, the city pulsed with life, his city, the kingdom he'd carved out with blood and cunning. The Lotus Gardens neon sign flickered in the distance, casting purple shadows across the street. He'd bought that club 10 years ago with money from his first big score. Now he owned half the block. She walked away. "Because you didn't give her a reason to stay." Min-sik turned sharply. "Careful, old man. Someone needs to say it." Choi's voice was gentle now, almost paternal. "You pushed her away to protect her. I understand that. But protection without honesty is just another prison. She didn't leave because she stopped loving you. She left because she couldn't trust you. The words hit harder than any punch Minsik had ever taken. He thought about that last night, Imani standing in their brownstone, their home, the place they'd picked out together, where they'd made love in every room, where she'd laughed at his terrible cooking and taught him how to make her grandmother's cornbread. She'd been packing her clothes into a suitcase, tears streaming down her face, and he'd just stood there, frozen, silent. "Were you ever going to tell me?" she'd asked, her voice breaking. "About Sora? About the marriage contract?" It wasn't real. It was just business. "We're married, Minsik. We stood in that courthouse and promised each other everything, and you kept this from me. How am I supposed to build a life with someone who treats our marriage like another business transaction?" He'd wanted to tell her everything then. About how the marriage arrangement was the only thing keeping the Yoon family from declaring war, how if he dissolved it without proper compensation, it would put a target on her back that no amount of security could protect against. About how every decision he made, every terrible thing he did, was to keep her safe in a world that would consume her the moment they saw weakness. But he couldn't. Because telling her the truth meant admitting just how deep his world went, how many bodies were buried beneath the empire he'd built, how the man she loved was also the man who'd ordered executions over dinner and slept soundly after. So he'd said nothing. And she'd left. The ring sat on the kitchen counter when he returned from trying to cool down. No note. Just the ring, catching the moonlight, a small circle of gold that had promised forever and delivered 8 months. "Sir." Choi's voice cut through the memory. "There's something you should know. About Imani." Minsik's head snapped up. "What about her?" "You asked me to keep tabs on her. Make sure she was safe. I've been discreet about it." "And?" Choi hesitated, which was unusual. In 20 years, Minsik had never seen the man hesitate. "She's been living in Queens, working as a bookkeeper for a small accounting firm. Quiet life. Stays away from anything connected to your world." "Good. That's what she wanted." "Sir, there's more." Choi pulled out his phone, his fingers trembling slightly as he scrolled through something. "My contact sent this 30 minutes ago. I wasn't sure if I should tell you, but..." The phone screen showed a photo taken from a distance, grainy, clearly shot with a telephoto lens from across the street. But the image was clear enough. Imani climbing out of a car. And even through the poor quality, even from that distance, there was no mistaking it. She was pregnant. Very pregnant. The world tilted. Minsik gripped the edge of his desk, his knuckles white. "When was this taken?" "Today. Around noon." Choi's voice seemed to come from very far away. "Sir, based on..." "It's mine." The words came out raw, certain. "The timing..." "It's mine." "I believe so, yes." Minsik's mind raced. 8 months since she left. If she was that far along, she would have known. She would have known when she walked out that door. Would have known when she filed the divorce papers. Would have known, and she'd chosen not to tell him. The rage came first, hot and immediate, flooding through his veins like fire. She'd kept this from him. His child. His blood. For 8 months, she'd carried his baby and said nothing, let him believe she'd simply moved on, started over, erased him from her life completely. His hand moved to the desk drawer, fingers wrapping around the ring he'd kept there, the metal biting into his palm as he squeezed. Then the rage collapsed into something worse. Fear. "Why didn't she tell me?" His voice came out hoarse, broken in a way that would have gotten him killed if any of his enemies heard it. "Choi, why wouldn't she?" "Because she was afraid." Choi's answer was simple, devastating. "Afraid you'd pull her back into this world. Afraid you'd choose your empire over your child. Afraid of exactly what you're feeling right now, that you'd take control of the situation instead of being her partner in it." Minsik sank into his chair, the ring still clutched in his fist. A baby. He was going to be a father. The thought terrified him more than any gang war, any threat, any bullet with his name on it. What did he know about being a father? His own had died when he was 7, killed in a factory accident back in Seoul. His mother had sent him to America at 19 with nothing but a suitcase and a warning to never come back empty-handed. He'd built everything through violence and cunning, through being harder and more ruthless than everyone else. How could he hold a baby with hands that had killed? How could he teach a child anything except how to survive in a world of shadows? But beneath the fear, something else stirred. Something he'd buried 8 months ago when Imani walked out. Hope. The desperate, foolish hope that maybe this was his chance. Not to go back to what they had, but to build something new. Something better. I need to see her. He stood abruptly, already moving toward the door. Now. Tonight. Sir, I don't think that's wise. I don't care what's wise. That's my child. He stopped, the word catching in his throat. My family. I need to see them. Choi stepped in front of him, physically blocking his path. It was a bold move, one that could have gotten any other man thrown through the window. And what are you going to say to her? That you're sorry? That you want another chance? She's heard that before, Min-sik. She needs more than words. Then what? The desperation in his voice was unfamiliar, uncomfortable. What am I supposed to do? You wait. You prepare. You figure out what kind of man you need to be, not for yourself, but for them. Choi's eyes were serious, heavy with the weight of years. You've spent your whole life taking what you want, when you want it. But this you have to earn back. And it starts with respecting her choice to keep this from you, even if it hurts. Min-sik wanted to argue, to rage against the unfairness of it all. But Choi was right. Barging into Imani's life now, demanding answers, demanding a place in their child's life, it would only prove every fear she'd had about him. That he couldn't change. That his way was the only way. That control mattered more than trust. So he did something he'd never done before. He waited. The next 3 weeks were torture. He threw himself into work, into the legitimate businesses he'd been slowly building, the restaurants, the real estate holdings, the investments that didn't require anyone to bleed. He met with lawyers about restructuring his operations, about creating distance between himself and the illegal enterprises that had built his fortune. He couldn't erase his past, couldn't wash the blood from his hands, but he could start building something clean for his child's future. At night, alone in his penthouse, he'd hold that ring and imagine what his baby might look like. Would they have Imani's warm brown eyes, her beautiful smile that could light up a room? Would they have his stubborn chin, his black hair? Would they grow up hating him for the things he'd done, or would he have a chance to be better than the sum of his sins? He attended meetings with the Yoon family, finalizing the dissolution of the marriage arrangement. Sora sat across from him, her face a perfect mask of indifference, but he could see the relief in her eyes. She'd never wanted this either, just another pawn in her family's games, same as him. The price was steep, $2 million in cash, territory rights, a promise of non-aggression that both sides knew was temporary at best. But it was done. That door was closed. You must really love her, Sora said as they signed the final documents. To give up this much. I do. Does she know that? Min-sik's pen paused on the paper. She will. 3 weeks and 2 days after seeing that photo, Min-sik's phone rang at 11:47 at night. He was in his office, reviewing contracts, trying not to think about the fact that Imani's due date had to be getting close. The number was blocked, but something made him answer. Min-sik? The voice was female, panicked, and it took him a moment to place it. Jade. Imani's best friend. Oh God, I didn't know if I should call you, but... His blood ran cold. What happened? Is Imani? She's in labor. At Mercy General Hospital in Queens. But something's wrong, the baby's in distress. They're talking about an emergency C-section, and she's terrified, and I know she said she didn't want you to know, but I can't just stand here and watch her go through this alone. Min-sik didn't hear the rest. He was already running, the phone pressed to his ear, shouting for Choi to bring the car around. I'm coming. Tell her I'm coming. Don't let them start without me. Min-sik, she might not want. I don't care. That's my wife. That's my child. I'm coming. The city blurred past the windows as Choi drove, breaking every traffic law, the speedometer pushing 90 on streets where the limit was 30. Min-sik's hands were shaking, actually shaking, as he stared at the ring he'd grabbed from his desk. 8 months. 8 months of silence, of distance, of pretending he could live without her. And now she was in pain, scared, possibly in danger, and he hadn't been there. He should have been there for all of it. The morning sickness, the first ultrasound, the moment she felt their baby kick for the first time. He should have been holding her hand, building the crib, arguing about names. Instead, he'd let his pride and his fear keep him away, convinced himself that distance was protection. Never again. Sir, we're here. Choi's voice cut through his thoughts as the car screeched to a stop outside the emergency entrance. Min-sik was out before the car fully stopped, running through the automatic doors, his expensive shoes squeaking on the sterile hospital floors. Imani Clark, he gasped at the reception desk. She's in labor, emergency C-section. Where is she? The nurse looked up, startled by the wild-eyed man in a $3,000 suit. Are you family? I'm her husband. The words came out fierce, possessive. I'm the father. Where is she? The nurse's fingers flew across her keyboard, her eyes widening as she read something on the screen. 4th floor, maternity wing, room 4012. But sir, they're already prepping her for surgery. Min-sik was already gone, sprinting toward the elevators. His heart hammered against his ribs as he jabbed the button repeatedly, cursing when the doors took too long to open. When they finally did, an elderly couple stepped out slowly, and he had to force himself not to physically push past them. The ride up felt eternal, each floor ticking by with agonizing slowness. 3rd floor. 4th floor. The doors opened and he ran. Room 4012. The door was partially open, and he could hear voices inside, medical staff speaking in urgent, clipped tones. He pushed through, and the scene before him made his blood freeze. Imani was on the bed, her face contorted in pain, tears streaming down her cheeks. She was connected to monitors that beeped urgently, for lines running into her arms. Jade stood to one side, gripping Imani's hand, her own face pale with fear. 2 nurses were adjusting equipment while a doctor in surgical scrubs was explaining something rapidly. Heart rate is dropping. We need to move now. Imani. Her name came out of Min-sik's mouth like a prayer, like a confession, like everything he'd been holding back for 8 months compressed into 3 syllables. Her head turned, those beautiful brown eyes going wide with shock. For a moment, the pain seemed to fade from her face, replaced by something he couldn't read. Disbelief. Anger. Relief. Maybe all 3. Min-sik? Her voice was weak, breathless. What are you? Sir, you can't be in here right now. A nurse moved to intercept him, but he sidestepped her smoothly, moving to Imani's bedside. We're about to take her into surgery. I'm the father. He looked at Imani as he said it, his eyes never leaving hers. I'm the father, and I'm not leaving her. Min-sik, you can't just... Imani gasped as another contraction hit, her hand squeezing Jade's so hard her knuckles went white. The monitor's beeping intensified, the baby's heartbeat irregular, concerning. The doctor stepped forward, his face grave. Mr. Kang Min-sik. Mr. Kang, your wife and baby are in distress. We need to perform an emergency cesarean section immediately. If you're going to stay, you need to scrub in now. We have maybe 5 minutes. Min-sik looked at Imani, really looked at her. She was terrified. He could see it in every line of her body, in the way her breath came too fast, in the tears that wouldn't stop falling. And underneath the fear, he saw something else. The question she wouldn't ask out loud, are you going to leave me again? I'm staying. He grabbed her free hand, the one that wasn't clutching Jade's, and brought it to his lips. I'm right here, Imani. I'm not going anywhere. I promise. You don't make promises you can't keep, she whispered, but her fingers tightened around his. You taught me that. Then let me teach you something new. He pressed her hand against his chest, against his racing heart. I keep this one. Whatever happens after, whatever you decide, I'm here right now. Let me be here. The doctor cleared his throat urgently. Mr. Kong, now. A nurse grabbed his arm, pulling him toward a side room. You have 2 minutes to scrub and gown up, or you don't come in at all. He let himself be led away, but his eyes stayed on Imani until the door closed between them. His hands shook as he scrubbed, as the nurse helped him into the surgical gown and cap. Through the window, he could see them wheeling Imani's bed toward the operating room, see her head turning, looking for him. First time? The nurse asked, not unkindly, as she tied his mask. Yes, for everything. First time being a father. First time feeling like his entire world balanced on the edge of a knife. First time understanding that all the power he'd accumulated, all the money and territory and fear he commanded, meant absolutely nothing in this moment. He couldn't threaten his way through this. Couldn't buy his way to a better outcome. All he could do was be there, and even that felt woefully inadequate. She's strong, the nurse said, leading him toward the operating room. And our team is the best. Try to stay calm for her. The operating room was blindingly bright, all sterile white and stainless steel. Imani was already on the table, her body draped with blue surgical sheets, a screen positioned so she couldn't see what the doctors were doing. Her eyes found his the moment he entered, wide and frightened and so tired. Minsik moved to her side, taking the small stool next to her head. He grabbed her hand again, and this time she didn't pull away. I'm here, he murmured, close to her ear. I've got you. I was going to tell you, she said, her voice barely audible under the bustle of the medical team preparing. After the baby was born. I was going to tell you then. I needed to know I could do this on my own first. That I wasn't just running back to you because I needed you. And now? Now I'm terrified. A sob caught in her throat. Minsik, what if something goes wrong? What if I can't? What if the baby? Hey, look at me. He leaned closer, his forehead almost touching hers, his hand cradling her face. Nothing is going wrong. You hear me? You're the strongest person I've ever met, Imani. You walked away from me when it took everything you had. You survived 8 months alone, building a life for our child. You're going to survive this too. Our child, she repeated, fresh tears sliding down her temples. You said our child. That's right. Ours. And I'm sorry, God, Imani, I'm so sorry I wasn't there. Sorry I made you feel like you had to do this alone. Sorry for every lie, every secret, every time I chose my pride over your trust. His own voice cracked. But I'm here now. And if you let me, I'll be here every day after this. Not as the man I was, but as the man I need to be. For you. For our baby. Miss Clark, we're starting the procedure now, the doctor announced. You're going to feel some pressure, but no pain. Mr. Kang, keep her calm and focused on you. Imani's grip on his hand turned crushing as the surgery began. Minsik talked to her, a steady stream of words, some in English, some in Korean, some that probably didn't make sense. He told her about the brownstone, how he'd kept it exactly as she'd left it, couldn't bring himself to change anything because it still smelled like her. He told her about dissolving the arrangement with Sora, about the lawyers and the businesses and the plans he'd been making. He told her things he'd never told anyone, about his mother, about the nightmares he still had sometimes, about how the first time he'd seen her at the Lotus Garden, something in his chest had cracked open and he'd known his life would never be the same. I love you, he said finally simply. I loved you when you left. I loved you every day you were gone. And I'll love you every day forward, whether you take me back or not. That doesn't change. Minsik, her words cut off as the doctor made an announcement. Okay, baby's coming out now. Time seemed to suspend. Minsik held his breath, his entire world narrowing to Imani's face, to her wide eyes, to the way she bit her lips so hard he thought she might draw blood. Then, a cry. High-pitched, indignant, absolutely perfect. It's a girl. The doctor's voice carried triumph and relief in equal measure. A beautiful baby girl. Imani sobbed, her whole body shaking. Minsik looked over the screen and saw the nurses cleaning a tiny, wriggling baby, all brown skin and black hair, and absolutely furious at being removed from her warm home. His daughter. His daughter. She's perfect, he breathed, his vision blurring. Imani, she's perfect. They brought her over, wrapped in a pink blanket, and placed her against Imani's chest for just a moment before they had to take her to be fully examined. Imani's hand came up to touch the baby's face, trembling, reverent. Hi, baby girl, she whispered. Hi, Arya. Mommy's here. Mommy's got you. Arya. She'd already named her. And she'd given her his last name too. He'd heard Jade mention it earlier. Arya Clark Kong. Their daughter. As the nurses took Arya to the warming station, as the doctors finished closing Imani's incision, Minsik stayed exactly where he was, holding Imani's hand, watching his daughter squirm and cry and exist in the world, feeling something in his chest that he'd never felt before, a love so vast and terrifying it made everything else seem small by comparison. Thank you, Imani said softly, her eyes already drooping from exhaustion and medication. For being here. For coming. Always, he promised. From now on, always. But as Imani drifted into unconscious recovery, as Minsik stood next to his daughter's bassinet watching her tiny chest rise and fall, his phone buzzed in his pocket. He pulled it out carefully, not wanting to disturb the baby. A text from Choi. 3 words that made his blood run cold. Asterisk, we have a problem. Asterisk. Below it, an attached photo. The Chongsu family's eldest son, the one he'd thrown out of his office 3 weeks ago, standing outside Mercy General Hospital, watching the entrance, waiting. Minsik looked at his daughter, at his exhausted wife recovering in the next room, and felt the weight of his past crashing into his present like a tidal wave. He'd thought dissolving the arrangement would be enough. He'd thought they'd accept the money and move on. He'd been wrong. And now his family, his wife, his hours-old daughter, were in a hospital, vulnerable, exposed, with an enemy circling outside like a shark that had tasted blood in the water. Minsik's hand moved to his phone, fingers hovering over Choi's number. 1 call. That's all it would take. 1 call and the Chong's son would disappear, would never threaten his family again. He'd done it 100 times before, solved problems the only way he knew how, with violence, with finality, with the cold calculation that had kept him alive and in power for 16 years. But then Arya made a small sound, her tiny fist escaping from her blanket, reaching toward nothing and everything. And Minsik remembered Imani's words from 8 months ago, the ones that had haunted him every single night since she'd left. Asterisk, you'll always choose that world over me. Asterisk. Not anymore. Not this time. He typed a response to Choi. Asterisk, get security up here. Discreet. No violence unless absolutely necessary. We handle this my way. Asterisk. Choi's reply came immediately. Asterisk, your way might get you killed. Asterisk. Minsik looked at his daughter one more time, then walked to the window. For stories down, he could see the Chong's son, phone pressed to his ear, 3 more men joining him on the street corner. A hit squad, most likely. Waiting for the right moment. Waiting for him to leave the hospital, or maybe not waiting at all. He'd spent his whole life being the predator. The hunter. The one who struck first and hardest. But that man, that Kong Minsik, couldn't be Arya's father. Couldn't be Imani's husband. That man would only bring them more danger, more blood, more midnight phone calls, and broken promises. So he had to become someone else. Starting right now. Minsik pulled out his phone again, but this time he didn't call Choi. He called someone he'd never thought he'd dial in his entire life. Detective Marcus Rodriguez, NYPD. The cop who'd been trying to bring him down for 5 years. Detective Rodriguez, the voice answered, suspicious even at midnight. This better be good. Detective, this is Kang Minsik. Silence on the other end. I'm at Mercy General Hospital in Queens. My wife just had our daughter. And there are 4 members of the Chongsa crime family currently staking out the entrance, likely planning to kill me or hurt my family to send a message. More silence. Then, you're calling the police? I'm calling you because I have information you want. Minsik watched the men below, watched their body language shift as more arrived. 6 now. This was serious. Everything. Names, locations, operations, money trails. The entire structure of organized crime in this city. I'll give you all of it. In exchange for what? Protection for my family. Immunity from prosecution for my wife. She was never involved in any of it. And, he swallowed hard. And a deal for myself. I'll testify, cooperate fully, serve whatever time is fair. But my daughter grows up safe. My wife gets to live without looking over her shoulder. That's the deal. Minsik? Imani's voice, weak and confused, came from behind him. He turned to see her awake, being wheeled back into the room in her bed, her eyes struggling to focus. What are you doing? Who are you talking to? He ended the call as Rodriguez was still sputtering questions and moved to her bedside. Her hand reached for his, and he took it, holding on like it was the only thing keeping him tethered to earth. Keeping my promise, he said. I told you I'd be here. That I'd choose you. Choose our family. I meant it. What does that mean? Minsik, what did you just do? Before he could answer, the door burst open. Not Choi. Not hospital staff. 2 of the Chongsa men, guns already drawn, moving fast. Minsik pushed himself between them and Imani's bed, his body a shield, his mind calculating angles, exits, possibilities. The gunshot was deafening in the small room. Imani screamed. But the shot hadn't come from the intruders. Choi stood in the doorway, his own weapon smoking, the first Chongsa man crumpling to the floor. The second turned toward this new threat, his gun swinging away from Minsik for just a second. That was all Minsik needed. He moved like he'd been trained since he was 20 years old, fast and brutal, disarming the man with a vicious strike to the wrist, the gun clattering away. Another strike to the throat. The man went down gasping. Alarms were shrieking now. Hospital security would arrive in seconds. Real police in minutes. Rodriguez was probably already dispatching units. And outside, for more members of the Chongsu family were undoubtedly on their way up. Choi, get them to the roof. Now. Minsik grabbed Arya's bassinet even as nurses rushed in, screaming at the chaos, at the body on the floor, at the blood spreading across pristine white linoleum. The helicopter. Get my family out of here. Sir, you can't just take a patient. A nurse tried to protest, but Choi's gun made the argument moot. Minsik, what is happening? Imani was crying now, reaching for Arya even as Choi wheeled both her bed and the bassinet toward the door. Please, just tell me. I'm fixing it, he said, walking backward, keeping himself between his family and any threat that might come through that door. I promise, Imani, I'm fixing all of it. But right now, I need you to trust me one more time. Can you do that? She looked at him, really looked at him. At the man who'd just called the police on himself. At the father who'd positioned his body to take bullets for his hours-old daughter. At the husband who was finally choosing them over everything else. One more time, she whispered. The elevator doors closed on them just as more gunfire erupted from the stairwell. The Chongsa reinforcements had arrived. But they were going up while Minsik's family went down away to safety. Where's the helicopter taking us? Imani asked as they descended. Safe house in upstate New York. Choi's brother owns it. No one knows about it. It's not on any of my books. Mincy kissed her forehead, then leaned down to look at Arya, still miraculously sleeping through the chaos. You'll be safe there. Both of you. And you. Imani's voice cracked. Mincy, where will you be? The elevator doors opened to the parking garage. Choi had already pulled a van around, engine running, side door open. In the distance, sirens wailed, police, lots of them, closing in fast. I'll be making sure they can't follow you, Mincy said. He helped load Imani's bed into the van, secured Arya's bassinet, and leaned in one last time. Cupped Imani's face in his hands. Kissed her like it might be the last time. I love you. I love our daughter. And I'm going to make sure you both get the life you deserve. Whatever that takes. Mincy, no, don't you dare. You promised you'd be here. And I will be. I swear on everything I am, I'll find my way back to you. He stepped back, nodded to Choi. Keep them safe. That's your only job now. Not me. Them. Sir, Choi's voice carried 16 years of loyalty, of brotherhood. That's in order. Mincy's hand rested on the van door. And Choi, thank you. For everything. The door slid shut on Imani's screams, on her hands pressed against the window, on his daughter's bassinet rocking gently as the van pulled away. Mincy watched until the taillights disappeared into the night, until he couldn't hear the engine anymore. Then he turned back to face the hospital, where police were now pouring in, where the Chongsu family was undoubtedly regrouping, where Detective Rodriguez would arrive any minute expecting the deal of his career. Kang Mincy had built an empire on the principle that power came from being willing to do what others couldn't. From being harder, colder, more ruthless than anyone else. But standing in that parking garage, knowing his wife and daughter were driving away from him, possibly forever, he finally understood what real power was. It was being willing to give it all up. For love. He raised his hands as the police flooded into the garage, their weapons drawn, their voices shouting commands. And as they pushed him to his knees, as the handcuffs clicked around his wrists, Kang Mincy smiled. Because somewhere in the darkness, driving towards safety and sunrise, were the only two people in the world who mattered. And for the first time in 16 years, he'd done something truly good. He'd saved them from himself. End of part 1. Thank you for staying till the end of this story, besties. Your subscription is a huge support to us, as our channel is still young and trying to grow. Please like, subscribe, and share this story with your besties. See you in the next one.